This is going to be your daily schedule if you're looking to compete in 2025. I'm going to lay out a few key things that you might be missing in your plan to get you on stage in 2025. Let's cut the bullshit and let's just jump right into this. Let's start where you wake up. First thing in the morning, we need to make sure, number one, we're setting things up for success. So what does this mean? Hydrate. Okay, when you get your ass up out of bed, make sure that you have water around. It doesn't have to be ice cold. It doesn't have to be anything special. It literally, you just need to have some water, anywhere between half a liter to a liter within the first 10-15 minutes when you wake up. Why do we do this? Because we want to be hydrated. So this is the thing. If we're just having water and we're not having minerals, you're really not going to hydrate effectively. So you need to make sure that you're having some kind of mineral rehydration supplement. There's a few good ones on the market. If you're in the States, one of the better ones is Element T. If you're in Canada, there's a good one called Relight. That one's great too. Throw a scoop in there first thing in the morning, get things moving. Now that we're hydrated and we're ready to go, don't reach for that coffee just yet. We don't want to get a bunch of stims rolling first thing in the morning. This is where schedule is going to make a big difference for different people. If you're training in the morning, weight training, first thing, we need to make sure that you're getting some form of carbohydrates in you, some form of fuel, right? So that's where the night before, we might be preloading some food. That meal might be a little bit heavier, might have some form of fast acting carbohydrates first thing in the morning. If you're more advanced, it might be something that you use with some fast acting insulin, something like Humalog. But just be mindful, if you don't know how to use that, don't fuck around with it, okay? If you are training later in the day after a few meals, which is obviously the best option, then first thing in the morning, we want to get some steps in, get some cardio in, get the metabolism rolling, get the body going in the right direction. So first thing in the morning, we're definitely still a little bit dehydrated. Even though you got some water in you, it's going to take a while for that to be able to get into the muscle. So generally, if someone is doing a shit ton of super intense cardio first thing in the morning, it might not be as productive as you think. That's where finding your threshold for the intensity of cardio, of what you're going to be doing, is super important. Some people can handle doing 30-45 minutes of stairs in the morning because they're conditioned to do so. If this isn't you, you can go for a walk and get some of your steps in first thing in the morning. This is something that I have incorporated into my schedule in the off season, which helps keep my consistency up between days. But in prep, this is kind of a non-negotiable. The days need to be as similar as possible. They call it Groundhog Day for a reason. We're wanting to make sure that the days are predictable. Our training is as good as possible, and we're moving our food and our cardio around to make that happen. If you're going to be spending time standing on a treadmill, on a Stairmaster, just zoning off into your phone, that's a waste of half an hour in the morning. So something that I like to do with my morning time is I like to do some worship music. As a Christian guy myself, I like to get plugged in, make sure that I kind of have my mindset on straight for the day. As you get deeper in prep, sometimes you are going to go away from things that are going to be as thought-provoking, and you kind of just need something that's going to be a little bit more of a distraction. So as you get closer to the show, you might want to find a series that takes a little bit of the time off and just gets you immersed into what you're doing. That's at the end of the day what we're looking for during that cardio, is just to make sure that it's as painless as possible, that you actually enjoy doing it, and that it's beneficial mentally for you as well. As you get a little bit later into the day, you can start getting a couple meals in you. Depending on how many calories you're going to be intaking, it's completely different for every person. Generally, if this is your first show, you're going to have a little bit less muscle. And because you have a little bit less muscle on your body, you're not going to need quite as much food. So that's where during the day, you might have a slightly different carb allotment to other people. This is very dependent on person to person, and it's something that a coach will switch back and forth. As you're getting these meals in, make sure that if you're able to, get some steps in, get some movement between these meals. If you're just eating your meals and sitting, that's what your food is doing too, okay? It's sitting in you, it's not digesting super well. If you're ever running into digestion issues, bloating issues, anything like that, that's usually the first fix, is like, hey, let's get some movement. It doesn't mean you have to go for a 15-minute hike or a walk. It's literally just eat your food and stay upright for a couple minutes, move around. A lot of guys that I work with are blue collar guys. They never have digestion issues. Why? Because they're moving. The guys that have digestion issues are the ones that are sitting down at a desk all day. Something that I do when I'm in contest prep, after I eat my meal, I have a set distance outside where I will walk to the end of the street and I'll come back. It's a 3-4 minute walk, but it actually makes a huge difference, not only to digestion, but overall step count of the day. Now we're getting a little deeper into the day. Depending on what your schedule is like, you might be 3 meals deep, you might be 4 meals deep. It's gonna be a little bit different for everyone, but the same principles apply. We want to make sure that we're having a well-digesting, decent meal before our training. We don't want to have something that's going to be super fat heavy. We want something that's going to digest well, not super fibrous, so that we can actually start to digest that pre-training, even a little bit intra-training, and that after it's ready and usable. After your workout, end of the night, this is where things might be a little bit different person to person. Like I said, if someone's training first thing in the morning, we're going to give them a heavier meal overnight. If somebody is training, in the afternoon, this is where calories might taper off. One exception being sleep quality. We'll touch on sleep in a minute here. With sleep, we need to make sure that your food isn't keeping you up. So if we're able to move some food around and just optimize your sleep, that's going to be huge. Something like pulling 50 grams of carbs from the middle of the day when you're busy and at your work and you're not thinking about it, to having that right before bed with that last meal is going to do wonders for your sleep. So this is person to person. We need to make sure that this fits into your macros, fits into your schedule, and optimizes what we're looking for. Now that we kind of have our day frame, of course, things are going to be different on training days than rest days, but our base idea is kind of there. Let's talk about a few other variables. Talking about bodybuilding, we're talking about drugs. Right? At the end of the day, that's it's incorporated into a large portion of the sport. When you're getting into this, less is more. Don't need to be taking the craziest cycles. You don't need to be doing what you read online about pros taking these crazy cycles from the 2000s and the 90s, even up to date. You need to make sure that that stack design is designed for you, where you're at right now, that it's manageable, that the side effects aren't too much, that it's enough anabolic total load to be able to retain muscle tissue, but it's not causing a bunch of side effects. We can touch on a few notables here. Something like trenbolone, hot topic. A lot of guys really love it. It's super common when you look online, but it's one of those things that you might actually not need. It might be causing more harm than good. Why? It can really fuck up your sleep. For a lot of people, it can fuck up their sleep, keep them up all night. It can cause a whole bunch of other issues, just with paranoia with certain people, anger issues with certain people. So that's where you need to be a little bit more mindful with the PED selection side of things. For example, for my guys, if it's your first show, we don't need to be doing these crazy toxic compounds. We can stick to a test base, and if we need to titrate up some more anabolics, it's going to be something that's going to be a little bit more benign, something like Primobolan, Mastron. If we need something really fast acting, we can use an oral like Anavar or Winstrol. But just remember, just because it is the hardcore, most toxic compound, it works so well, it doesn't mean that it's actually the best thing for you, and it might not get you actually the best results on stage either, right? If you guys are interested more in talking about PEDs and stuff like that, comment below and we can have a whole episode about that. Moving on, big one. Let's talk about sleep and recovery. Hot topic again right now. We're talking about fatigue management. Most people in their first couple shows, you don't really need to worry about it as much as social media might point at. You just simply don't have enough tissue. You're not able to burn yourself out to the amount that somebody of a pro bodybuilder with a whole bunch of muscle is going to be able to burn themselves out. They're able to overtrain way easier than somebody with less muscle. Still, we need to make sure that performance is stable. We're not looking for crazy PRs in the gym every single session. That's not what this is about. This is about retaining performance, retaining tissue throughout the fat loss phase. It's not about getting stronger throughout the prep. If you do by chance, that's awesome, but that's not the goal. So let's continue to talk about sleep. Sleep and recovery are amongst one of the most important movers of fat loss. If you're not sleeping, you're not recovering, your body isn't working optimally, you're not going to be shedding fat. How do we optimize sleep? One, you need to make sure that you're having a schedule. Can't be going to bed at different times every night, waking up at different times during the the day. You need to set up a consistent schedule that's going to be day in, day out. Something that I would do personally for me right now, what I do is at 8 o'clock, my girlfriend and I will watch about half an hour of a show together. We'll eat our last meal, and from 8:30 to 9, we both read. And this doesn't have to be your exact thing to do. You know, you're going to figure out what works best for you, but we need to be winding down at the end of the night. You need to have pretty set times of when you're going to be going to bed, when you're going to start winding down for the night, so you can actually get quality sleep. If the drugs are fucking with your sleep, it's usually best to just pull that particular compound out and increase something else with less of a side effect profile. Let's talk briefly about training. Training during contest prep. We're not looking to kill ourselves in the gym. We want to hold on to as much strength. We want to be able to hold volume. We want to be able to get as much frequency as we can. All the same variables during the off season, but that's where we need to be more mindful about retaining strength rather than pushing to new levels of strength. This is where instead of adding volume might actually get pulled during these phases. I've had this conversation with a lot of new competitors who think that the deeper you're going to get towards the show, the more you're going to be training. And that's actually the opposite of how it needs to be handled. The closer you get to the show, the less you're going to be training. You might be going from 6 days a week to 5 days a week to 4 days a week to potentially even 3 days a week. That way, we're keeping a quality stimulus, getting as much quality work in rather than just having a bunch of garbage work throughout the week. That's going to hold our strength a lot more. At some point in prep, you're going to have to do some exercise selection management. Certain exercises that are going to be more nervous system fatiguing. You know, you might have to pull out something like a back squat and head to a hack squat, something that's going to be supported. That way we're actually able to still get a quality stimulus without creating a bunch of fatigue, without changing a bunch of variables. So something like that is a good swap. For another example, instead of doing a dumbbell incline press, we might switch to a hammer incline press. Something that we're still going to get a great stimulus, but it's going to be predictable. We're not having to do a bunch of stabilizing, and it's going to be able to actually make some good leaps during that period. Let's briefly touch on nutrition. So nutrition in contest prep is the main driver. It really is. If you're not in a deficit, you're not going to be pulling fat off. So that's number one. We need to make sure that we're in a deficit. Number two, we need to make sure that those food choices that we're having are not causing digestion issues. This can be a big one for vegetables primarily during the contest prep. Vegetables often get raised to be able to keep you fuller throughout meal to meal. As the carbohydrates and the fats will get lower, the fibrous veggies are going to get a little bit higher. So we need to make sure that we're keeping on top of digestion. We're not having a bunch of broccoli that's messing your gut up. Number three, meal timing. We want to make sure that our meals are pushed around our training to make sure that it's feeding our performance. You don't want to be fasting all day, doing intermittent fasting to get into contest prep shape. It's just not going to leave you with the best outcome. We want to make sure that you're getting fed throughout the day, making sure that we're getting solid training in and driving a deficit that way rather than starving ourselves. Generally, protein sources are going to stay pretty stable in this phase. Protein amount over the off season compared to contest prep, they're really not that different. It's kind of the one variable that's going to stay in there. The only time it's really going to change is if we really need to pull some calories. Or if you're getting super hungry and we can sacrifice a little bit of the protein to be able to incorporate some more carbohydrates back into the diet to feed performance, that is the option. That's a good way to do it. Lastly, let's talk about mindset. During contest prep, it's very easy to become obsessed. If you're looking to compete in 2025, you need to make sure that your mind is in the right place. You need to be locked in to a certain routine, a schedule. You need to make sure that your life is set up in a productive way for that prep. This doesn't mean abandoning all your family. This doesn't mean breaking up with your girlfriend and quitting your job to be able to keep a certain schedule. No. You need to have conversations with the people around you that are going to be supporting you through this. You need to make sure that they're on board as well. They're not signing up for a show, but they're signing up to support you through this contest prep. They're just as much in it as you are. You need to make sure that you're not a prick. You're open communication on how you're feeling, setting boundaries, and also It's a give and a take. It's very easy to watch relationships fall apart during contest prep because all of the time gets put towards contest prep. Sometimes it kind of has to be that way a little bit. That's absolutely fine, but your partner needs to know, or whoever's supporting you needs to know, that this isn't forever. It's going to be for the last 8-10 weeks of this prep. You're going to be dialed in on that show, and when it's over, they're going to be getting some attention back. Feed into these relationships. Another thing to touch on, you're in contest prep. Everyone is asking you all the time when you're at the gym, how's your prep going? You're looking great. They're feeding your ego. They're not meaning to, but slowly you can see egos rise over somebody's contest prep. We want to make sure that you're confident and that you're leading into the show, that you're feeling good about it, that your peers are supporting you. Okay, great. But you're not the star of the show. You're not the only one in the world. You need to make sure that other people are heard. You need to make sure that conversations with your spouse, with your friends, with coworkers isn't just always about chicken and broccoli and your posing routine and all the nuances that come with bodybuilding. You need to kind of keep that to yourself sometimes. Coming out of the show, very important to know, after about a week of congratulations, you looked great, it's almost like nobody gives a shit anymore. So you go from having all of this praise all day, you're amazing, you're doing so great, you're looking great, your show's over, good job, and no one says anything again. That's where you need to keep some identity for yourself. That's where you see people get lost in post-show blues. They get depressed after their show because they're no longer feeling validated. If you put all of your self-worth in the prep, yeah, it's gonna hit you when the prep is over. That's why you need to kind of set your life up in a way, have people around you, have other interests, that when you come out of prep, you're actually able to handle that post-show blues phase. I hope that was helpful for you guys. If you have any more questions about what doing a show in 2025 would look like, the actual logistics of show day, what it looks like going through the process of signing up for shows, how to pose, anything like that, drop that below. Subscribe. If you're looking for more information, you can message me on Instagram in the link below. You can go to my website at the link below. Have a kick-ass day. Thanks for listening, guys.